Dr. Min-jun Park rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the massive display screen in Earth's deep space monitoring station. The numbers made no sense at first. Then, they made too much sense, and his blood turned cold. "So Young, come look at this," he called to his partner across the control room. So Young Kim was the best language expert on Earth, but right now he needed her to tell him he was reading the data wrong. She walked over, coffee cup in hand, and looked at the screen. Her face went pale. How many ships? 3,000. Maybe more. They're still coming out of jump space. Min-jun pointed to the edge of the solar system, where dark shapes appeared like drops of oil in water. "The computer says they'll be here in 6 hours. So Young set down her coffee with shaking hands. The Vorthak Empire. Everyone knew that name. For the past 50 years, Earth had been hearing the stories from refugee ships that limped into human space. Entire worlds burned. Civilizations that had lasted thousands of years wiped out in days. The Vorthaks called it cleansing the chaos. They said some species brought disorder to the galaxy and had to be removed. Min-jun pulled up the communication logs. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, same message they sent to every world they destroyed. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and mechanical. It spoke in perfect English, somehow. "People of the third planet. Your species has been marked for cleansing. You spread chaos and disorder wherever you go. You have 24 hours to surrender your world and submit to processing. Resistance will result in immediate sterilization of your planet. This is your only warning." So Young sat down hard in her chair. 24 hours. Min-jun, there are 7 billion people on Earth. I know. He was already reaching for the emergency communication system. "I have to contact the Defense Council. Get the military. Start evacuation procedures." But So Young caught his hand. "Wait. Look at this." She pointed to her computer screen where she had been analyzing the Vorthak message. They said, "We spread chaos and disorder." But look at their other messages. They said the same thing about the Kepler colony, about the Centauri settlements, about every world they destroyed. What's your point? My point is that they're wrong about us. Dead wrong. She started typing fast, pulling up files from her research. I've been studying human communication patterns for 20 years. Yes, we're different from other species. But it's not chaos, Min-jun. It's creativity. It's the ability to make something new from nothing. Min-jun stared at her. So Young. Now is not the time for linguistic theory. We have 6 hours before the largest war fleet in known space arrives to kill everyone we've ever known. No, listen to me. She grabbed his shoulders. What if we don't fight them the way they expect? What if we don't surrender and we don't shoot back? What if we do something they've never seen before? Like what? So Young was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. And it was the strangest smile Min-jun had ever seen. Sad and hopeful at the same time. What if we show them who we really are? And she started pulling up files from the Global Cultural Archive. Music from every nation on Earth. Art from every time period. Stories that made people laugh and cry. Poems that captured the feeling of first love or the pain of losing someone you cared about. You want to send them our music? Min-jun asked. I want to send them our souls. Min-jun looked at the approaching fleet on his screen. 3,000 ships designed for one purpose. Destroying worlds that the Vorthak Empire decided were too chaotic to exist. Then he looked at So Young, who was already setting up broadcast equipment with the intensity of someone who believed she could save the world with a song. The government will never approve this, he said. Then, we don't ask permission. She connected her computer to the Deep Space Communication Array, the most powerful transmitter humanity had ever built. Min-jun, I've read every single report from the worlds they destroyed. Every species tried the same thing. They either surrendered or they fought. None of them tried to communicate who they really were. Because it sounds crazy. Maybe. But everything else is definitely going to get us all killed. She started the upload process. Help me, or don't. But I'm doing this. Minjun watched the progress bar slowly fill as thousands of years of human culture began uploading to the transmission system. Music from Korea, from Africa, from South America. Paintings that showed humanity at its best and worst. Stories of love and loss and hope and fear. He thought about his daughter, asleep at home with her mother. He thought about all the children on Earth who might never grow up if this didn't work. Then he thought about all the children on other worlds who had never gotten the chance to grow up because no one had tried something different. What do you need me to do? He asked. So Young's smile got wider. Help me show them that chaos and creativity are not the same thing. Help me prove that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. They worked together in the quiet control room while outside, emergency sirens began to wail across Earth. Military ships launched from hidden bases. Evacuation centers opened in every major city. But in the Deep Space Monitoring Station, 2 humans prepared to broadcast something that had never been sent into space before. The complete, unfiltered truth of what it meant to be human. The transmission began exactly 4 hours before the Vorthak fleet would arrive. It carried the voice of every person who had ever lived on Earth, speaking in the universal language of creation itself. Admiral Zex Thor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main display. The small blue world looked peaceful from this distance. But he knew better. Chaos worlds always looked innocent, until you got close enough to see the disorder they spread. Admiral, we're receiving an unusual transmission from the target world, his communications officer reported. Another surrender attempt? Zex Thor asked, without looking away from the display. Or are they threatening us? With their primitive weapons? Neither, sir. It's difficult to classify. Zex Thor finally turned. In his 300 years of military service, he had never heard his communications officer sound confused. Put it on the main speakers. Put. The sound that filled the bridge was unlike anything the Vorthak crew had ever heard. It started soft, like wind through metal, but it carried something that made Zex Thor's chest feel tight. A human voice began singing in a language he didn't recognize, but somehow the meaning was clear. It was about missing someone who was far away. What is this? Demanded his second-in-command. The communications officer checked his instruments. It appears to be recreational audio? No, wait. There are visual components as well. Moving images. Text in multiple languages. Sir, it's enormous. The data stream is bigger than our entire military database. On the display screens around the bridge, images began to appear. A human child laughing as she ran through water that shot up from the ground. An old man's weathered hands carefully carving wood into a bird. 2 humans holding each other while tears ran down their faces. A group of humans raising their voices together in harmony. Turn it off, Zex Thor ordered. But his voice came out quieter than he intended. Sir, it's on all frequencies. They're broadcasting with more power than we've ever recorded from a pre-spaceflight civilization. More images flowed across the screens. Humans creating things. Humans helping each other. Humans at their worst moments and their best. The music changed to something with drums and strings that made Zex Thor think of running across open fields. Which was impossible, because he had never seen an open field in his life. Sir, we're getting reports from across the fleet. Another officer called out. Some ships are requesting permission to continue receiving the transmission. What? Zex Thor spun around. Requesting permission for what? To keep listening, sir. The crews want to keep listening. Zex Thor had conquered 47 worlds. He had seen species beg for mercy. He had watched them fight with desperate courage. He had heard them curse his name as their cities burned. But he had never, in all his years of war, heard a species respond to invasion by sharing their most personal thoughts and feelings. The transmission continued. Now it was showing human festivals from around their world. Thousands of humans gathered together, not for war or conquest, but simply to celebrate being alive. The music was joyful and loud, and Zexthor found himself tapping his claw against the command console without realizing it. Admiral, we're receiving similar reactions from monitoring stations throughout the sector, his intelligence officer reported. The transmission is being picked up by every species within 50 light-years. Sir, some of them are. Responding. Responding how? They're broadcasting back, sending their own cultural data. The Altarians just transmitted their poetry archives. The Zephyrians are sending musical compositions. Sir, it's like the humans started something, and now everyone wants to participate. Zexthor stared at the reports flowing across his screen. Species that hadn't communicated with each other in centuries were suddenly sharing their art, their music, their stories. All because these chaotic humans had decided to broadcast their culture instead of their weapons. This is a trick, he said firmly. Some kind of psychological warfare. But even as he spoke, he was watching a human female singing a lullaby to a small child. The melody was simple, but it carried love so pure that Zexthor felt something crack inside his chest. He remembered his own offspring, left behind on the Vorthak homeworld, who would never hear such gentleness in their lives. Sir, the transmission is changing, the communications officer announced. They're adding new content in real time. It's like they're showing us everything they are. The screens now showed humans at work. Not the military preparations Zexthor had expected, but humans teaching children, humans healing the sick, humans creating art and music and stories, humans laughing together, humans crying together, humans choosing compassion when they could choose cruelty. Admiral, request from the 13th Battle Group, came another report. They want to delay the attack schedule. Admiral. Denied. Sir, they say they need more time to analyze this new form of psychological warfare. But Zexthor knew it wasn't warfare. It was something far more dangerous than any weapon. It was honesty. Pure, complete honesty about what these humans were and what they valued. And it was making his entire fleet question everything they thought they knew about chaos species. The music changed again. This time, it was sad and beautiful, telling the story of loss and hope intertwined. Zexthor found himself thinking about all the worlds he had destroyed, all the cultures he had erased. For the first time in his military career, he wondered what songs those species might have sung, if anyone had bothered to listen. Sir, we're getting reports of work stoppages on 7 ships. His second-in-command reported quietly. The crews are. They're listening to the transmission instead of preparing for battle. Zexthor looked at the display showing Earth. The small blue world continued broadcasting its soul to the galaxy, unaware that it was slowly tearing apart the foundations of the most powerful military force in known space. The humans weren't fighting the Vorthak Empire. They were transforming it, one song at a time. Haewon Lee pressed her face against the cold metal wall of the mining station and closed her eyes. The human transmission had been playing for 6 hours now, and she couldn't stop listening. She hadn't heard Korean in 3 years, not since the Vorthaks destroyed New Sol Colony and took her as a worker. The mining station orbited a dead star in the Kepler system. Hundreds of different species worked here, all taken from worlds the Empire had conquered. They mined rare metals from the star's remains, and they died when they got too weak to work. Haewon was 22 years old, but she felt ancient. Turn that off before the guards hear, whispered Torvin, the blue-scaled Altarian who worked beside her. You know what happens if they catch us listening to unauthorized broadcasts. But Haewon couldn't turn it off. A human woman was singing a song her grandmother used to sing, about mountains and home, and never giving up hope. Tears ran down HFY's face as she listened to words she thought she would never hear again. "They're still alive," she whispered. "Earth is still alive. And they're fighting back." "They're not fighting," said Mordak, an elderly Zephyrian whose wings had been clipped when he was captured. "That's not what fighting sounds like." He was right. The transmission wasn't weapons or battle cries. It was music and art and stories. It was humans sharing everything beautiful they had ever created, broadcasting their culture like a gift to the universe. "Then what are they doing?" HFY asked. Mordak's eyes grew bright. "They're remembering who they are. And they're helping us remember who we are too." As if summoned by his words, the transmission shifted to something new. Human voices speaking in dozens of languages. But the message was the same in all of them. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. Your voice matters. Around the mining station, something began to change. The Altarian workers started humming along with the human melodies. The Zephyrians began moving their clipped wings in rhythm with the music. Species that hadn't spoken to each other in years started gathering in small groups, sharing memories of their home worlds. "This is dangerous," Torvin said, but he was smiling for the first time since HFY had known him. "The guards will notice." "Let them notice," said a new voice. Kretal, the insect-like hive-san who rarely spoke to anyone, approached their group. "I just received a message from my homeworld. They thought all of us here were dead, but they heard the human broadcast, and they're sending their own cultural transmission in response. Our death songs, our memory dances. They want the galaxy to know we existed." More workers gathered around them. Each species began sharing stories of their homeworlds, their art, their music. The Vorthax had tried to erase these cultures, but they lived on in the memories of the survivors. And now, inspired by humanity's courage to broadcast their souls, the survivors were sharing those memories with each other. HFY listened to a Centauri lullaby and a Martian war chant. She heard Altarian poetry about stars and Zephyrian songs about flying free. Each species had something beautiful and unique to offer, something the Empire had tried to destroy. "Attention all workers!" The harsh voice of the station commander boomed through the corridors. "Return to your assignments immediately. Unauthorized gatherings are forbidden." But nobody moved. For the first time in years, the workers of mining station Kepler 7 stood together, listening to the voices of their ancestors and their dreams. The guards came running. Heavily armed Vorthax soldiers with energy weapons and stun clubs. They had always been enough to control the workers before, but something had changed. "I said return to work," the lead guard shouted, raising his weapon. HFY stepped forward. She was small and young and had been broken by 3 years of slavery. But she stood straight and spoke in a clear voice. "We are working. We're working to remember who we are." The guard looked confused. "You're workers. You mine metals. That's who you are." "No," said Mordak, his clipped wings trembling with emotion. "I am a poet from the cloud cities of Zephyr Prime. I wrote songs about flying among the stars." "I am a teacher," said Torven. "I taught children about the beauty of mathematics." "I am a guardian of memory eggs," said Kretal. "I protected the stories of 1,000 generations." One by one, every worker on the station spoke their name and their truth. Not their job assignment or their prisoner number, but who they really were before the Empire tried to erase them. The guards looked at each other nervously. They had been trained to control workers, not to deal with people who suddenly remembered they were more than just their labor. From the speakers throughout the station, the human transmission continued. Now it was playing music from Earth's different cultures, showing how diversity made humanity stronger, not weaker. The message was clear. Differences weren't chaos, they were beauty. "Sir, we're getting reports from mining stations throughout the sector." One guard spoke into his communicator. "The workers are refusing to return to their assignments. They're singing, sir. Similar reports came from factory worlds and prison planets across the Empire. The human transmission had reached every corner of Vorthok space, and everywhere it went, it reminded enslaved peoples of their dignity and worth. HFY looked at the guards with something that might have been pity. Don't you have songs from your homeworld? Stories that your parents told you? Dreams of something better than this? The lead guard's weapon wavered. Behind his helmet, she could see confusion in his eyes. He had spent so long being a soldier that he had forgotten what it felt like to be anything else. We have orders, he said weakly. You have choices, HFY replied. Just like we do. The humans are showing us that we all have choices. The human transmission shifted again, now playing something soft and hopeful. A song about tomorrow and the possibility of change. Throughout the mining station, voices from a dozen different species began humming along, creating a harmony that had never existed before. For the first time in the Empire's history, the enslaved were refusing to be silent. Dr. So-Young Kim stared at her computer screen in disbelief. The readings made no sense, but the instruments didn't lie. Min-jun, you need to see this. He hurried over from the communication console where he had been monitoring fleet positions. The Vorthak ships had stopped moving toward Earth an hour ago, and just hung in space, like they were waiting for something. What is it? The transmission. It's not just going out anymore. It's syncing with everything. She pointed to the quantum frequency monitors. Look at these patterns. Min-jun studied the displays. The human cultural broadcast was somehow linking with quantum fields throughout the galaxy. Music from Earth was creating resonance patterns in subspace itself. That's impossible. Our technology isn't advanced enough to affect quantum mechanics on this scale. That's what I thought. But look at this. So-Young pulled up astronomical data from observatories around the world. Stars. They're responding to our broadcast. The images showed something that had never been recorded in all of human history. Stars across the galaxy were pulsing in rhythm with the music from Earth. Not just nearby stars, but distant suns thousands of light years away. The universe itself was keeping time with humanity's heartbeat. How is this happening? Min-jun whispered. So-Young's hands shook as she typed. I don't think we're just sending out radio waves anymore. I think we're speaking the language the universe understands. The language of creation. On the main display, Admiral Zex Thor's face appeared. The Vorthak leader looked older than he had 12 hours ago, and there was something in his eyes that Min-jun had never seen in a Vorthak before. Uncertainty. Humans of Earth, Zex Thor said. We demand that you cease your transmission immediately. You are causing disturbances throughout Imperial space. So-Young activated their communication link. Admiral, we're not trying to cause disturbances. We're just sharing who we are. Your sharing is awakening things that should remain dormant. Zex Thor's image flickered as stellar interference affected the signal. Ancient installations throughout the galaxy are activating. Technologies that have been dead for millions of years are responding to your broadcast. Min-jun and So-Young exchanged glances. What kind of installations? Min-jun asked. We don't know. The Empire has cataloged them as dead relics from a previous galactic civilization. But your transmission is making them sing. The communication was interrupted by urgent alerts from Earth's deep space sensors. So-Young brought up the data and gasped. Min-jun, look at this! The Kepler ruins, the Centauri monuments, the Vega crystals. Every ancient site in known space is lighting up. Archaeological sites that had puzzled scientists for centuries were suddenly active. Structures built by unknown species millions of years ago were awakening, all responding to humanity's cultural broadcast. The ruins weren't just receiving the transmission. They were amplifying it, adding their own harmonics to the galaxy-wide song. What were these ancient builders? So-Young wondered aloud. On the screen, Admiral Zex Thor looked haggard. Our archives speak of them as the first ones. They supposedly seeded the galaxy with the potential for life and consciousness. But that's just mythology. Maybe not, So Young said. She was pulling up linguistic analysis of the signals coming from the ancient sites. These patterns. They're similar to human creativity patterns. Not identical, but like. Like. They come from the same source. The implications hit Min Jun like a physical blow. You think humans are connected to these first ones? I think humans are what these first ones were working toward, So Young said. A species that could speak directly to the creative force of the universe. That's why we make art and music and stories. It's not just entertainment. It's the language of existence itself. As if to confirm her words, the stellar pulsing grew stronger. Every star in the galaxy was now beating in perfect harmony with the human transmission. The ancient ruins were adding their own voices to the song, creating a symphony of creation that spanned the entire Milky Way. Reports began flooding in from across human space. On Mars, the mysterious crystal formations were glowing with warm light. In the asteroid belt, mining crews reported that space itself seemed to be humming. Even on Earth, ancient sites like Stonehenge and the pyramids were resonating with harmonic frequencies. Admiral, So Young said to Zex Thor's image, "What exactly is happening in your territory?" Zex Thor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Planets we sterilized decades ago are showing signs of life again. Worlds we thought were dead are healing. And our enslaved populations are not just rebelling, they're creating art, music, stories, just like you're broadcasting. Because that's what consciousness does, So Young said gently. It creates, it imagines, it makes something beautiful from nothing. You've been calling it chaos, but it's actually the opposite. It's the fundamental force that built the universe. The communication link crackled with interference as more stellar phenomena activated. Ancient beacon networks that had been silent for eons began transmitting across the galaxy. The messages were different but somehow the same. Welcome. Create. Remember who you are. Min Jun looked at the readings flowing across his screens. So Young, I think we just accidentally announced to the galaxy that humans are the inheritors of the first one's mission. Not inheritors, she corrected. Partners. Look at what's happening. We didn't make the stars pulse or wake up the ancient sites. We just gave permission. We showed that it was safe to be creative again, to make something beautiful instead of something destructive. Admiral Zex Thor's face on the screen showed dawning realization and terror in equal measure. If this is true, if humans are connected to the fundamental creative force of the universe, then the Empire has been fighting against existence itself. So Young finished. Every time you destroyed a creative species, you were working against what the universe is trying to become. The stars pulsed brighter, as if approving of her words. Across the galaxy, the ancient song of creation played on, carried by human voices, but joined by every species that chose to add their voice to the cosmic harmony. Admiral Zex Thor stood alone on his bridge, watching his empire crumble in the most beautiful way possible. Through the observation windows, he could see his own ships. Vorthak soldiers had abandoned their posts to stand at the windows, listening to the galaxy-wide song that humanity had awakened. Some were even humming along. Admiral, we have incoming messages from the High Command, his communications officer reported. The young Vorthak's voice had changed over the past day. It was softer now, more uncertain. They're demanding to know why we haven't begun the cleansing of Earth. Zex Thor looked at the display showing Earth. The small blue world continued its broadcast, now joined by thousands of other voices from across the galaxy. Former slave worlds were adding their own cultural transmissions. Ancient ruins sang with harmonies older than recorded history. Even some Vorthak colonies were beginning to respond. their people remembering songs they had thought were lost forever. Tell High Command that Earth presents unique strategic challenges, Zex Thor said, finally. Sir, perhaps it would be easier if you spoke to them directly. The communication link activated, and the stern face of Supreme Commander Vorthek appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Zex Thor could see the war room on the Vorthak homeworld, filled with military officials who looked confused and angry. Admiral, explain yourself, Vorthek demanded. Why is Earth still transmitting? Why haven't you begun orbital bombardment? Zex Thor took a deep breath. He had served the Empire for 3 centuries, never questioning orders, never doubting the rightness of their mission. But now, with the song of creation filling his ship and his heart, he found himself speaking words he never thought he would say. Because we were wrong. The war room fell silent. Vorthek's face turned a deeper shade of green. Explain. These humans aren't chaos bringers. They're connected to something fundamental. Something we've been fighting against for 1,000 years without understanding what it was. Zex Thor gestured to his own crew. Look around you, Commander. Our soldiers are laying down their weapons to listen to alien music. Our enslaved populations are creating art instead of mining metals. Worlds we thought were dead are coming back to life. These are weaknesses to be eliminated, Vorthek shouted. Emotions make soldiers ineffective. Do they? Zex Thor asked quietly. Or do they make us remember why we became soldiers in the first place? To protect something worth protecting? On his personal display, Zex Thor pulled up reports from across the Empire. On mining station Kepler 7, workers of different species had organized themselves into cooperative teams that were actually producing more efficiently than the old slave system. On Factory World Epsilon, former prisoners were designing new technologies based on creative principles rather than purely military ones. Throughout Vorthak space, people were choosing cooperation over conquest. The humans are offering us something, Commander, Zex Thor continued. Not surrender. Not defeat. They're offering us a place in a galaxy where our strength serves creation instead of destruction. And you believe this nonsense? Vorthek's voice was full of disgust. Zex Thor looked around his bridge at his crew. Young Vorthaks who had never known anything but military discipline were quietly sharing stories of their home villages, their families, their dreams of what life might be like without constant war. The communication from Earth crackled to life. Doctor. So Young Kim's voice filled the bridge, speaking directly to the Vorthak fleet. Admiral Zex Thor, we know you're listening. We want to make you an offer. We know you're listening. We don't negotiate with chaos species, Vorthek said harshly. But So Young continued as if she hadn't heard him. We're broadcasting the coordinates for a meeting. Just you, Admiral. No weapons, no tricks. We want to show you something. Zex Thor studied the coordinates. It was a location in empty space between Earth and his fleet. What do you want to show me? 1. The choice. Minjun Park's voice joined the transmission. The real choice. Not between conquest and surrender, but between destruction and creation. Against all military protocol, against all his training, Admiral Zex Thor made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. I'll come. Admiral, no. Vorta commanded. Return to base immediately. Vorta capesize. I-teen re. I-teen. One size. But Zex Thor was already moving toward his personal shuttle. The fleet will maintain position. Do not engage Earth under any circumstances. An hour later, Zex Thor's small ship hung in empty space between the massive Vorthak fleet and the tiny blue world that had somehow stopped the greatest military force in the galaxy with nothing but art and music. Waiting for him was a single human shuttle. As he watched, both ships' airlocks opened, and a flexible tunnel extended between them. 2 humans floated across to meet him. Dr. Minjun Park and Dr. So Young Kim. They were smaller than he had expected, fragile-looking beings who could barely survive in space without their protective suits. But when they spoke, their voices carried the strength that had awakened stars. "Thank you for coming," So Young said. "We wanted you to see this in person." She activated a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. But now, instead of the rigid territorial boundaries of the Vorthak Empire, Zexthor saw something else. Lines of light connected every inhabited world, carrying not military communications but music, art, stories, and dreams. The galaxy had become a vast network of consciousness, all connected by the simple human desire to share what was beautiful. "This is what we're offering," Minjun said. "Not the end of the Vorthak people, but the beginning of the Vorthak contribution to galactic civilization. You're strong, organized, disciplined." Zexthor stared at the display. For the first time in his life, he could see a future where his people's strength served creation rather than conquest. And if we choose differently, if the Empire decides to continue as before, quote. So Young's expression was sad but resolute. "Then, the galaxy will defend itself. Not with weapons, but with the same force that stopped your fleet. The universe itself chooses creation over destruction. Always. After stay." Zexthor looked back toward his fleet, then toward Earth, then at the holographic galaxy filled with light and life and possibility. The choice had never been clearer. When he returned to his flagship, he gave an order that no Vorthak admiral had ever given before. "All ships, stand down. We're going home to discuss joining the galactic community. All ships, all ships, all ships." Behind him, Earth continued its broadcast, now joined by 3,000 Vorthak voices, learning to sing.